Happy Rom-Com Month, everybody. We are doing 28 Days of Love, and today is day 10. I am your host, Melissa Forzia. I'm a keynote speaker. And when I speak, my topic is something I call Take the Doughnut, which is another way to say Carpe Diem. That comes from this strange thing that happened in college. I left an actual donut on a table, and it became an object lesson for me and what it looks like to leave an opportunity behind. So now I want to take the donut. So the reason I'm saying that is that sometimes I'll issue myself a Take the Doughnut challenge. If there's something that I want to do, something I want to go after, I'll make it official, make some videos about it, and it's a way to hold myself accountable. So this time I wanted to open up this challenge to anybody who wants to join now or in the future. And we're doing 28 Days of Love. So again, today is day 10. We're watching the movie Catch and Release, and we're going to talk about 10 things we love about this film, and I'm not doing it alone. I am joined today by a very special guest, Tom Parkin of Tom Parkin Films, who's also the Deputy Film Commissioner of Boulder County, which is a location for this film. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Melissa.
So glad to have you here to talk about everything that you think about the film, but also Boulder. So this is going to be such a blast. But before we do that, tell me a little bit about your experience with this film without sort of spoiling anything on your list of favorite things.
Sure.
What's your journey with it?
I'm a filmmaker, media producer, content creator, whatever you want to label it these days. But I've been in Boulder for 40 years. And I remember specifically when this film came to Boulder to be filmed. It was very exciting for all of us filmmakers here in town and kind of seeing the crew down on our Pearl Street Mall, which is our downtown sort of crown jewel area. It's an outdoor pedestrian mall, as well as other locations. And we were just thrilled to have it here. And I mean, just seeing the crew. It's always fun when a major motion picture from Hollywood is filming in your town. And part of being the deputy film commissioner of Boulder County is to attract, filmmakers to come to our town and our county to film here. Just helps with the economics and helps get us more on the map. And frankly, employs a lot of people when they're here. So that's my experience from it back then.
Well, I can't wait to get into this, and you're exactly the right person to talk to about this movie. So, first of all, just to reset this for people, Catch and Release came out in 2006. It was written and directed by Susanna Grant, stars Jennifer Garner as Gray, Timothy Olyphant as Fritz, Kevin Smith as Sam Jaeger as Dennis, Juliette Lewis as Maureen, Joshua Friesen as Maddie, and Fiona Shaw as Mrs. Douglas. I wanted to really go into it there because I think all the people in this film are so special. The way we're going to cover this, some people may know me for doing deep dives, but the way we're covering this one is we're sharing 10 things we love about this film. I'll take the even numbers. Tom is going to take the odd numbers. And we're just going to go through some of the things that strike us. They can be really small details, lines of dialogue. They could be big themes or big, whatever comes to mind for us is what we'll bring up here. And the conversation goes where the conversation goes after that. So I'm actually going to start off here with number 10. I could have put this anywhere on the list, but I'm gonna start with it. The soundtrack. For me, this might be I don't know if I'm going to say my favorite movie soundtrack, but it's up there for me. The aesthetic of it, it's just in this interesting space. It's got the Death Cab for Cutie vibe all the way through. Songs like Razor and Morning's 11 and Resistance and These Three Sins and Soul Meets Body and There Goes the Fear. Every song feels like I think There Goes the Fear might have been in one other rom-com that I've covered this month so far.
Right.
But for the most part, these songs are not songs that tend to come up in other movies. And it makes me wonder how they were being curated, how people were getting the rights. Music
Oh, that's a whole.
supervisor must have been a hero on this movie. So for me, you know, so much of the way I feel about a movie can be dictated by what I'm hearing on as the scenes are happening. And this soundtrack, just point for point, they just nailed it.
I'm right there. You know what? That just missed my list. That was actually you gave me my top five. That was my number six was the score and the soundtrack. Because as a filmmaker, the musical score is it's like a supporting character in the film. If it doesn't fit, it can really throw the whole vibe of the film off. And that would have been on my list. That was just missing. I'm so glad you said that. So that's great.
I think we're really going to complement each other well because I had
Okay.
to pare down my list quite a bit, and I think some
Sure.
of the things are maybe on yours.
Right.
It has sort of an indie feel. The Probably a lot of indie bands actually.
Hmm.
And I think that's appropriate for this movie because this movie is a lot of things.
Right.
It sort of defies genre, even though I put it in on a rom-com list. It's got
Yeah.
drama,
Right.
but it has an independent film quality to
Right.
it,
Right.
and the soundtrack matches that.
And if you don't mind me touching on this, but because you mentioned like it's got an independent film feel, we feel that now today because they don't make movies like this anymore. Their budget was about $25 million. Okay. That doesn't happen anymore. The reason they did those back then, and other movies that kind of fall into that category, like things like Good Will Hunting and these sort of like like 20 to 20, $30 million movies, the reason they could make those so well back then, and they could technically lose money at the box office, then make their money back in DVD rentals and sales. They don't have that anymore. So today we don't really see movies like this, which is a shame because there's so many stories that could be told, like Catch and Release, that were just fun, easy movies to watch and make.
Yeah. And well, that's the interesting thing about this too, because I don't know that either of us were specifically going to address this, but it is fun and easy, but also not. It's a
Mhm.
rom-com through grief.
Yes.
And I think it's hard to put a label on what that is. So I think, when you're marketing something like this, how do you market it? How you market is what people are expecting when they go see it. And
Mhm.
so there's probably a mismatch for a lot of people. And it's one of the reasons why it was so important to me to put this one on my list because I really like this film for what it is, not for what it people might label it as.
Right.
And so again, it goes with that. Like so many independent films, these films of this budget that you're talking about, they could do a lot of stories that it's more about the story than about the genre that it sits in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And this is just an example
Yeah.
of that.
I mean, you bring up a good point. So when this came out in 2006, that was sort of the height of the Matthew McConaughey rom-com era, where that's probably how they marketed Catch and Release, where it's not like those movies. It's much deeper. It addresses, death in the family. How do you move on? Then find new love, and how do you deal with that? So, I'm so glad you brought this movie into this mix because it's not talked enough about.
Well, okay, so we got some mileage out of the soundtrack here for number
Yep.
10. What do you want to bring in for number 9?
Okay, for number nine, it's a little obvious, but I'm going straight to Jennifer Garner.
Mm.
I think she's one of the most underused actors in Hollywood. I mean, she's been a movie star for well over 20 years now, and I think she's really, really good, even in movies like Juno. And I'm going to say it, I liked the Daredevil movie she did with Ben Affleck. I thought she was a great Elektra. I collected comic books. I collected Daredevil. She was perfect. The Electra movie she did, it's not her fault. She was great in it. It just wasn't the best thing in the world, but it was fun to see that character. So she can do superheroes, she can do drama, she can do comedies, she can kind of do it all. And I just don't think she's used enough in Hollywood. Um, it's sort of a sad state for a lot of actresses these days that, they kind of don't get used enough. And I think she's terrific. And I liked her performance in this film was understated and just deep, and you see it in her face. It's not with her words, it's not with her actions. You see it in her face, and the movie starts off with a close up of her face, and she's just you don't know what she's forced into this funeral when she was supposed to be having a wedding, and just is so this complication in her face. There's hurt, there's desperation, and throughout the film, you see it slowly getting a little bit better as her relationship with Timothy Olyphant is
Mhm.
going. And just like, okay. And that's hard to do because films aren't filmed in order. So she has to know okay, when this scene, I have to be this. And people don't see that. And I just think she's terrific.
She managed the progression beautifully. I love Jennifer Garner from, I first knew her from Alias, and
Of
well, I
course.
first knew her from Felicity, then I knew her from Alias,
Mhm.
but she had a much smaller role in Felicity. And I've gotten a chance to see so many of her movies, and I think she brings with her, for better or for worse, she brings with her like a whole vibe, a whole brand, really. Like I think who doesn't like Jennifer,
Right.
she's just so likable as a human, it seems like. And
Right.
none of us really know her.
No.
Maybe you do, I don't know, but
Nope.
she's
Not all.
she just seems really likable and
Mhm.
really genuine,
Yeah.
and like somebody you'd want to sit and have a conversation with. And I feel like that really adds a lot to this film because especially with that opening shot of on close up on her face in grief, pretty stunned by the turn of
Mhm.
events that she's dealing with, and you just instantly are drawn to her and want to like her and want to follow her story. And the fact that she's sort of in a recovery process through
Right.
the whole movie and starts to find her way. I feel like I can watch it without passing judgment on her
Yeah.
because I'm just invited to be in her world. Just her face does that all by itself.
Yeah.
So I
Yep.
love that you brought her up here. She's brilliant in this film. Um, okay, so
All
Jennifer
right.
Garner, number
Yeah.
9.
Yeah.
So good. Well, I'm for number 8, I just want to bring up it's really a scene. This might end up tying into something you want to bring up, so I'll be careful. But
Okay.
number 8, Sam is 100%, 200% committed to being back, thinking, dreaming, and flat out being Celestial Seasonings herbal tea. the whole his whole look, he is the comedy of the
Yeah.
rom-com here. He that scene is so exactly why he's perfect for this movie.
Yeah.
um and it's such, I love it when you get a movie that isn't just moving through the paces but will let you stop down on details about characters like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
His job at Celestial Seasonings is a factor for the entire movie. It comes up in multiple ways, but him stating his case to a boss that we can't see,
Yeah.
um
Yeah. You
is
know,
so
I
good.
just I wonder if there was an actor who's like there was a reaction shot, but they cut it out. I'm like, oh, too
Probably
bad.
not.
Yeah. I Kevin Smith, I mean, if I wonder how much Susanna, the director, like let him kind of riff a little bit because he is a brilliant writer with dialogue, and it just reeks of Kevin Smith dialogue when he's talking. Like, I wonder if she let him kind of, and throughout the whole film when he's doing these little Celestial Seasonings sayings, you think he's saying something brilliant, like, oh, that's just from the Celestial Seasonings box. Oh, okay. Like, all right, it's something I would do. Like, I'm not that witty. But then he even admits that, well, I didn't write. I just put it on the box. Someone else wrote it. I put it on the box. See,
Yeah,
okay.
it's a famous quote. It's on the Lemon Zinger box.
Oh, he's just so good. He's so good. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That scene just cracks me up. And just the idea that I figure probably there was nobody there, and that's probably why they shot it through the doorway.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You know. He needed, as a filmmaker, he needed someone to have an eye line with. I bet the director was there. Just,
Yeah.
just talk
Just
to me.
yeah, just give us what you got about Celestial Seasonings. I don't know. I'm assuming they sponsored this movie. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm sure that, well, they at least needed permission. That's a pretty good, well, Celestial Seasonings is here in Boulder.
hmm
So it's, one of our big, tea company. Well, it's the only tea company really. And yeah, I have some in my cabinet upstairs. I mean, you can't not. You have to
Yeah,
if
me
you
too. Yeah, I'm a
Special
tea
Seasonings.
drinker for sure.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I
So,
mean, this podcast not sponsored by Celestial Seasonings, but probably should have been.
well, it should be. I should have put a little logo at the bottom of the screen here. All right, Celestial Seasonings.
as we as I drink my tea.
Yeah, this is totally Celestial Seasonings.
Oh my goodness.
It's
So
not coffee.
so I think okay, so that's number 8. I mean, it was a specific scene, but let's see where you want to go with number 7 on this one.
Well, this is perfect timing. My number it's Kevin Smith. I'm a filmmaker, and he was one of my inspirations. I was in college when Clerks came out. I was studying film. Like, oh. well, if he can do that with credit cards, I can do this too. So, I mean, his dialogue, everything about it put me on the trajectory of wanting to be a filmmaker myself. So, he was one of just a few inspirations in the film world. And so, yeah, followed his career forever. And when I found out that he's just going to be an actor in a movie, I'm like, he even admits he's not an actor. This will be fun. And so you watch the film. That's just Kevin Smith being Kevin Smith, which is great. He fits the character perfectly for the role. You needed a character like this in Catch and Release. Okay. You needed some comic relief, just, to breathe. And you needed that one character who's just so supportive no matter what. And that's what I love about this character that's played. It's Sam, right? He's
Hmm.
the character. Yeah. So the character of Sam, because there's a lot of heavy things happening in this film. And when Jennifer Garner has to move in with them, just because she couldn't afford the place they were living together. And so he's the roommate. He's like the main guy, I guess. He must be, not the landlord, but it's his place. They're renting from him, whatever. And so but he's just so jovial. And what I love about it? The first 3 or 4 scenes with him, he's always eating in this film. He's literally, first time you see him, he's eating at the little memorial service in the beginning of the film. That's how we meet him. He's eating, you know? And
All the way through the piping hot dog at the end.
yes, just constant eating. All right, we're just eating. And as a filmmaker, continuity, shot to shot, you got to make sure you're still, in every take, you have to, okay, on this line, I'm eating with this hand. You got to make sure it's all the same all the way through. That's not easy to do. And he pulls it off with a great attitude. He's fun. I loved seeing him just act in a movie. I wish he did more. I wish he did more.
Yeah, he's such a lighthearted well, he's got a lighthearted presence in this film until the moment you find out he doesn't.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the interesting things about this movie is like everybody's got a coping mechanism.
Hmm.
So some of these things that seemed comedic and funny at the start, there's a point where it sort of takes a little bit of a turn where, he I don't know if I'd say ODs, but he's he gets hospitalized
Yeah.
for taking too many pills.
Right.
And you're like, oh, there was something underneath all that. It was masking something. And I think that's one of the things that's really interesting about this movie because it's hard to place it as a comedy because even the comedic
Yeah.
relief is hurting.
Yeah.
So it's
Mhm.
it's really tricky, but he is absolutely brilliant in this movie, and he just brings such a natural quality. And I think the movie also needs him because he's a glue. He's really like he has a connection, a really solid connection with everybody individually in this
Right.
movie,
Yep.
where if he weren't there, I feel like some of these characters would be more likely to go off on their own.
Yeah.
But he's the binding force, and that's important.
And
So,
that comes from the script by Susanna. I mean, it's really well written. And I mean, she has a long history. I think, wasn't she the writer of Party of Five?
oh,
So
really?
she
Ooh.
has that experience with a group of people and different characters and bringing them together. And there's always going to be that glue. And he's the glue
Yeah.
and the comic relief. And in any good storytelling, you get them at the beginning with laughter, they're going to love you through the whole thing, especially through the tragedy part. So, it's like, oh, I really feel for this guy. You can't come away from this film not identifying with each of those main characters in some way. So, so
Yeah. Well, okay, that'll bring me to number 6 to talk about another character. I would like to talk about this character more widely, but the headline here is The Mystery of Fritz. I love Timothy Olyphant.
yeah,
I really enjoy his work. I think he's great in this film. Something that the more times I've watched this, sometimes what I think about with this is why is he staying here? Gray at one point says, that's why you're here. You're here to clean up after Grady. And I'm not sure if that's true.
I don't think it is.
I I think it's an interesting thing to consider, and I think we're both maybe landing on not that as the answer.
Hmm.
I feel like he's protecting her from the beginning even though I don't know if he really knows her. I think he has known for a long time what Grady has been up to.
Mm-hmm.
I think he had some sort of moral qualm with it, but
Hmm.
was a friend of Grady's and kept it to himself. And in Grady's passing, he has to decide. And he is now going to be there for the people who are probably going to see some fallout.
Right, 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 right.
It's she in her anger says, "You're here to clean up after him." But I feel like he's there for her, knowing that a world of nonsense is about to come to her at
Right,
some point.
right.
But that's my interpretation of it. And I feel like this might be a Rorschach test of what you see when you look at this character, because I think he starts off with a coping mechanism of his own, like opening, a second scene with him or seeing what he's doing to feel better.
Sure.
And but by the end of the film, it's like that's not actually who he is. That's just what he did at the start of the film.
Right.
Like they're making him kind of unlikable in the beginning, but I actually think he always had a sensitive side and was always looking out for these people in his way.
I think so.
Um, okay, so are you coming in on the same angle?
Well, I have a question for you, and this is where I like the script so much by Susanna because it lets us discuss this. Because had that phone call not happened, where she answered and she gives the phone, and he's like, "It's not for me," and he's asleep. He wakes, "Oh, that's probably the girl calling." Had that not happened, do you think he would have told her eventually? I mean, I he was basically caught in a way
Yeah. Yeah.
because the
I
phone
think it,
call came in and those 10 missed phone calls,
yeah.
and like, huh. So had she not caught that,
Yeah. It feels to me like this would have surfaced somehow
yeah,
because
because
Grady was financially supporting Maureen and her son.
yeah,
And I at some point Maureen was going to get more and more urgent with the digging she was doing on this.
right.
I imagine she would have somehow found his address, maybe white pages or something like that if
She would have
you know
shown up anyway. Yeah,
she would have shown up. And think I wonder if I wonder if Fritz was just going to be there until that happened.
good call. Yeah, I
You
think you're
know, like
right.
how not knowing how long that would take. He put his life kind of on hold,
Yeah, yeah.
um, and was sort of waiting for the other shoe to drop. That's how I interpret it, but I bet people can look at him very differently from
Hmm.
that. There's a lot of room
Sure.
for bringing your life experience and putting it on Fritz
Right,
and saying, okay, I think this is what this character is.
right, right, right.
Yeah.
I like it.
Um, okay, so that's number six. What do you have for number five?
Number five. Oh, I'm going to talk about Susanna Grant, the writer and director.
Perfect.
So I did not get to meet her, but we premiered the film at the Boulder International Film Festival in 2006, before the release, the wide release. And she came, and I still have my raw footage of the red carpet where she walked up and was greeted and said hello. And there's a whole interview on stage, and I don't know, it was just a fun moment because you hear something's filmed in Boulder, and then you wait to see it. But well, we actually had it at our film festival opening night. It was the big premiere film, and it was only the second year of the Boulder Film Festival, so it was a big moment. It's always technically, I think she was the first big name to come to our festival, in terms of filmmakers. It was only our second year. Um, so that was amazing. And then, you end up, and she, this is her whole resume, I mean, she wrote Aaron Brockovich. She's just like a big time name. And she came to our town, all us little filmmakers like, oh my God, she's here. So it was just a great night, great moment. And, nothing but it's such a pleasure to have her in her town.
This is so good to hear, and um, again, I don't know if this movie gets talked about enough, so I love that she got to have this experience of people really celebrating
Mhm.
and putting this movie and her up on a pedestal
Mhm.
through this festival, and I love it. It gave all of you this memory and this affirmation and this encouragement to do more and more in Boulder.
Mhm. And the actual raw footage itself, there's interviews of people out front, including kids who came to see the film too, and like, we're so excited to see this. It was a fun night.
Yeah. So good. I'm gonna take this to another scene. a specific scene here for number four.
Okay.
Um, Give me the planer, Dennis. Um, the fight between
Yes.
the fight between Sam and Dennis,
Yes.
but also more widely, their dynamic.
Right.
Um, they are uh they're, in another film, they're like the odd couple. Like
Yeah.
there could be a film just about them, but they
Right.
are part of a wider picture in this
Sure.
movie. And all the times that they bicker, all the times that they're friends,
Hmm.
all the times they support each other grudgingly or not. And then, it just explodes. Dennis is a has a storm cloud over his head from everything that he's now experienced
Yep.
with Gray
Hmm.
and with Fritz for that matter. And he's just massacring this door. Their front door is never going to be the same because of what he's doing to it. And
Yeah. That door, it's not even about the door. I mean, this guy, it's so funny how I identified with his Fritz, right?
Mhm,
Secretly in love with Jennifer Garner the whole time.
mhm.
That's so me. I've always been like the best friend who just, never got the girl. You know what I mean? Well, I
Yeah.
mean, growing up. And then it was just like, oh my God, that frustration. He's like, oh,
Yeah.
oh. It's got nothing to do with the door. It's
Mhm.
about his entire life. Like, and then he finally gets that date with the girl. And then, because Kevin Smith had written down, like, oh my God. Just can't catch a break. That guy cannot catch a break.
He
And the
cannot.
fight, though, I love because, okay, Kevin Smith's the best friend, and then Fritz is the business partner, but they're clearly friends also. And it's like this, like, no, he's my best friend. No, he's my best friend. Just they were just having it out, and it was just,
It needed to erupt at some point. I mean, there's a lot of tension in this house, really. Like they're
yeah,
they're doing their best.
sure,
And Dennis has had way too much.
yeah,
Okay? It's been too much. And
yeah,
like he's lost kind of everything at this point.
yes,
Um, and so he's gonna take it out on the one safe person that still exists.
it was safe,
And,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, they weren't really gonna hurt each other, but like, all right.
Yeah.
No
Oh, it's
punches
so
are
good.
thrown. It's more just like gonna wrestle. Like, ah! So,
And the shooting that must have been interesting too, because they start on the porch and they go into the house. And so it
right,
must have been quite an exercise that day,
right,
literally for them.
right,
And also just like that transition of sort of the outside to the inside of the
right,
house.
right, right, right.
Um, but yeah, oh
But
my
then
God.
how it ends is perfect with Timothy. I forget the character's name, but when
So
Timothy
he,
comes
yeah,
out of
Fritz.
the red room and they're like, oh, okay. Now it all makes
Sam's
sense.
like, I see.
Aha.
Resume
So
using me as a punching bag. I see.
it was a great way to end the fight. Because how do you end this? Like, well, that could be the big reveal of their relationship. Like, oh, okay.
Hmm.
So,
I mean, the truth is, kind of everybody in that house loves Gray,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
everybody. And so it's just so happens Fritz is the one she loves back, or she's getting there. So it's bound to explode at some point, and
Sure.
give me the plainer Dennis. There
It
it
was fun
is.
to watch. Again, that's great writing. It's really well written.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, that was number four. Where do
Okay.
you have for number three?
Oh, okay. So number three. Oh, I want to talk about the cinematographer, John Lindley. So, as a cinematographer, filmmaker myself, I'm looking to shoot a feature film here in Boulder this summer. And it's always fun to see what other cinematographers have done, choices they make in terms of where to shoot and how to shoot in Boulder. So, this guy's been a cinematographer for a very long time. So he shot Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner. God, I'm trying to remember what else You've Got Mail. I mean, if you just look him up, he's got a long list of really big movies. And even recently, he did Tulsa King with Sylvester Stallone, the TV show. It's so well done and it looks so good. And a seasoned cinematographer shot that TV show because it just looks like a movie. Like it's like epic. So I just wanted to basically just give a shout out to the cinematography because it looks really good. And going back to that, this is only a $25 million. I say only $25 million. I know it sounds like, oh, that's all. That's actually really low budget for a movie like this. So to be able to accomplish, make it looks like a more expensive movie than $25 million. So it just looks great. I just wanted to say, hey, wow, capturing my city. Like, okay, that's great the way they did this thing. I see restaurants that I go to in the background, like, oh, that's good. Oh, and our downtown pedestrian mall, Pearl Street Mall. There's a shot where the two Timothy and Jennifer are walking, just walking and talking, and clearly he's like walking backwards with them, and they're in this medium shot, basically the same angle that we have right here, and they're chatting the whole way. People don't know how hard that actually is to shoot. Like keep them exactly framed while we're walking backwards, and there's a whole dialogue of them walking and talking. There's no
Hmm.
like cutaways. It's just one shot the whole way. And then they finally stop and they can talk, and then they can cut and get different close-ups. But yeah, it's a good minute or two of them literally just walking. And
I love
it's
that
really,
scene
it's really,
too.
really well shot.
That's the one where she gives him the shirt as well, right?
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot. In that shot, I went to that high school. That's my Boulder High School t-shirt.
Oh, wow.
Oh, so when we were all watching this movie, like back when it came, like, oh, there's our Boulder High shirt. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So
What
that's
a
where I went
good
to high school.
touch.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty fun.
This movie, the cinematography, the shot, the choice of shots, and also the editing, I think, it does not
Mhm.
get it serves the story. It does
Yep.
not get in the way of the story. It serves the story. I think that scene is a perfect example of it because I feel like there's just a lightness and a happiness
Hmm.
uh of their of the setting that they're in,
Right.
and it feels like their spirits are lifting. It's actually sort of the first totally positive conversation they've had with each other at that
Yeah.
point, and you can
Yeah.
feel it reflected around them. There's a the there's a little bit more of a lightness in their conversation there than there has been with those characters,
Right.
and the choice of how this was shot is part of how you get there. I also think between that and the editing,
Yep.
there were some like interesting edits in this film as well. There were a couple scenes that were presented in a way that was a little bit more artistic than a lot of
Mhm.
rom-coms will do.
Okay.
Like the love, well, the love scene, um,
Right.
at night where there's like a blending of the images and you're like,
Yep.
what am I looking at? And it's
Yeah.
very purposefully done in that way.
Mhm.
Or even that first time when Fritz sort of rescues Gray from the bar from making a mistake, and he gets
Yes.
her out of there, and he's walking her out, being a good friend. He's walking her out, making sure she gets home safe. And as they get to the door, there's like a triple cut. There's like they repeat the
I remember that cut. Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah. And it's
Right.
like, oh, this is a moment, like something's shifting with them right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So I think like there were these things that were done in the artistry of the film to
Right.
say something that a
Yeah.
lot of times rom-coms don't. They keep it much more simple than this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and I like that this film experimented in those ways.
Sure. And what I like the organic nature of the film in terms like back to that scene on the mall when they're walking. They didn't go there together. He was there as a photographer taking photos and he's looking at one of his photos and she's in the background. And he's like, wait, she's here? And it was organic. It wasn't like, let's go take a walk on the mall. No, no. And that like you said, it was like kind of like their first kind of like positive conversation because it was a happy accident, you know?
Hmm.
So I like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And frankly, she had worse things happen to her that day than seeing Fritz.
Right. Right.
Like this
You
was
know?
like, thank goodness,
Yeah, yeah,
familiar face.
yeah.
She's
Right.
just been eviscerated by her almost mother-in-law.
Oh, that was
It's-
a hard scene to watch. I'm glad that character had a full circle and came right back around. So,
Yeah,
um, you know,
yeah,
it
yeah,
wasn't the stereotypical evil future mother-in-law. It was like,
yeah.
okay, because
It
they
was
started
another
that way. I'm
person
like, okay, all right,
grieving. Yeah,
around. Good.
yeah. I like that they made the choices they made with that character.
Absolutely.
Well, okay, so that was number three. Okay, this is going to bring me to number two. Look, I figured it probably wouldn't be on your list, but it's going to be on mine. That first kiss between Fritz and Gray, right after she finally figures out, like, yep, Fritz was protecting me. Grady, who I was supposed to marry, he was cheating on me during the relationship, and he had this kid, and this kid's too young, like
Yeah,
much
yeah,
younger
yeah.
than Fritz said,
Not eight, not eight.
not 8. And she goes in with a little aggression, that's really directed at Grady,
Mhm.
but Grady is not there.
Right.
And so Fritz is, and the energy turns to passion, and this kiss. I don't know how many people saw this movie. My sense is that it's not the most known movie on my list.
Right.
But I will tell you that there are multiple YouTube videos for this kiss. One of them is over 21 million views.
Oh,
So my suspicion is that more people have seen the kiss than the movie itself.
right. Like, what movie is
Um,
this? So,
yeah, go watch the rest of the movie. It's
yeah,
so
yeah,
good.
yeah.
But yeah, the wow, the chemistry between those two. The way it reads on screen, no dialogue in that scene. Um, once they get
None
into the
needed. No
room,
dialogue
yeah.
needed. Yeah.
And it's just like we just know we know.
Yeah.
Um, and man, is it compelling.
Yeah.
And it's been compelling between them the whole
Mhm.
time for
Yeah.
me.
Right.
And I think partly because I read Fritz the way I read him.
Yeah.
Um, so, your mileage may vary if you see his motivations coming from a different place, but for me, I think he's kind of always been sort of like keeping an eye on what the fallout looks like for her, and
Yeah.
then sort of
Yeah.
developed a sweetness for her along the way. And this like takes a turn that they weren't expecting. Um, but yeah, what a that chemistry between them, that kiss, amazing.
I like it for several reasons. One, in so many movies, you're like, ah, that wouldn't happen. Like, oh, I don't buy this, but I bought it. I was like, okay. Part of it is because you're going into a rom-com, so they're gonna have something sometime, but it wasn't forced. It was a lot of build up to it. So it's totally believable. You know, it's all in the face, right? It's not the lines, it's not the acting, it's right here. Like, okay, that makes sense. And then I liked that they didn't have the super awkward after moment. The next scene is like, she's on the porch and he comes out and they talk about something else. And then she's like, oh, by the way, he's like, yeah, it's fine. Whatever. That's more realistic to me than, they handled it very, very well.
Yeah.
Um,
And I also think in terms of the writing, um, on first glance,
mhm.
you might think, okay, what we need to overcome is the journey for Gray here, because Gray, just recently lost her fiance, thought she was going to get married to him.
Mhm.
Um, so like, is is she ready to do this in her grief? She's been coping by getting organized, by taking control of Grady's finances, but like she's been doing this project and she threw herself into that, just keeping things organized and working properly. So on first glance, you have to think like, okay, she has to have gotten like to this point where she's prepared to open up like this.
Right.
But also, the writing of this film needs to be such that I buy that, because when we see Fritz at the very beginning, he's having a random hookup, and I need to believe this is not a random hookup
Right.
for this to work, right?
Right.
So like
Right.
for
Right.
we have to feel like this is qualitatively different than
Right.
that. And I believe that. I think I've seen enough from Fritz at this point to say, no, this is a real thing for him. That was a coping mechanism.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This is different. And so the writing got me to that place for both of those characters, and then situationally made it such that something was going to happen here. The tension was too high. It's like it's not dissimilar to the Give Me the Planner Dennis fight. Like
Yeah.
those are both explosions in their way,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
in a safe space. So it's yeah, Susanna Grant.
Yeah, I know. Need more of her. What's going on? I haven't looked
Yeah.
her up recently, so I don't know what she's doing.
Yeah, so true. Well, okay, so that was number 2. What do you have for number 1?
All right. It's a little self-serving, but location, location, location. Um, you know, Deputy Film Commissioner of Boulder County. It's part of my job to get people attracted to Boulder. And so just seeing our hometown in a film like this is just, I don't know, gives me the giggles, gives me the feels, you know what I mean? Like, oh, this is wonderful. And it shows what we can do in this town, and just I love seeing. We just had a movie shoot here 2 years ago called Elevation, with Anthony Mackie, and that was just released. And you just get that. That's a horror movie, but a science fiction movie, but lots of aerial shots and everything. This is a nice, so we can shoot anything here, and just seeing catch and release being shot, produced, and screened here. It's just, I don't know. It's a self-serving little location thing, but locations are a big character of any film. And so I would love to, if we ever interview Susanna about, hey, why did you pick Boulder of all places? I mean, you're writing a script, you're literally writing Boulder, Colorado. So what made this filmmaker choose Boulder, Colorado? You know, um, it could be, I think a lot of the shooting actually happened in like Vancouver, but I mean, clearly it's external shots here, and it just, I don't know. I love it. So that's really it. A bit of a, self-serving number one for me. But I mean, what did you think about the location?
I loved it, and I was glad that I was glad that you were the one who was going to be my guest on this one because I would have wanted to try to squeeze Boulder into my top five. And so the fact that it's getting covered in our top 10 is amazing to me.
Sure.
I think it's Fritz at one point who describes Boulder as does he say Patagonia Disneyland or something
Yeah,
like that?
sure, sure.
Um, and actually the way, especially in that scene we talked about with the walking backwards, um,
Right.
I
Sure.
feel that that was the energy that is brought to that. And actually it's important because the house that they live in becomes a place where they're all grieving, like it's
Yeah.
this, like, things are happening there, lightness is happening, jokes are happening, but also it's sort of this, like, it's just the washing machine is spinning with the same feelings they've had over and over. So when
Sure.
we get these scenes where we can go out into nature, when we get these scenes where we can go out into the town that they're in,
Hmm.
into the city that they're in, we can get sort of like new life in
Hmm.
this film, and they can get new life, and we need to inject that into this
Right.
movie at points.
Right.
And I feel that. So Boulder feels like a breath of relief,
Hmm. Hmm.
and a
Hmm.
positive influence on this
Yeah.
film. And I think it's a great representation of, or it's great marketing for Boulder to be able to say, like,
Well, we want to shoot more
Boulder.
films here, so yeah. And I felt Kevin Smith. I identified a lot with the Kevin Smith character because at the end, we can talk about the end, right? There's no
Sure, yeah.
okay. So what everyone moves out, but he stays. I never left Boulder. My closest friends growing up, they all moved on. They don't live here anymore. But I'm like, well, yeah, I stayed. I'm staying. I love it here. And that scene on the mall where, Timothy is talking about how, like, yeah, everyone's so happy here. Why is everyone so happy? And I'm like, this town, you grow up here, people are just, very outdoorsy, lots of sunshine, a lot of vitamin D. That's what happens,
And I don't know what the location was when they go to the river at that one
Well,
point.
I know that was supposed to be the Boulder Creek, which we have the big creek that goes right downtown. That was probably shot in Canada because
Okay.
the bridge in the background, that's not here. I didn't see that. That's not.
Okay.
But it represented the Boulder Creek, which is, a major attractor for downtown.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what it does symbolize for me, I assume it's not all the same, I figured they maybe would have gone somewhere else for some of these other scenes, but
Right.
I think the idea that I do associate Boulder with being an outdoorsy place, but also
Mhm.
that it has this cute community vibe,
Right. Right.
in sort of the center of it,
Right.
that you
Right.
kind of have all of those things happening. And then it has also this sort of like suburban feel, all very close to each other.
Mhm.
So it feels like a really well located set film.
Right.
Because it doesn't feel like a big city movie. It
Right.
feels like this is exactly the right place.
Right. And this is what I tell people who are thinking about shooting here, we have everything you would need for a film except the ocean. So
Mhm.
we have the plains, we have a college town, we're a college town, we have Denver for a big metro city, we have mountains, we have 300 sunny days a year, we got ski resorts. Well, what do you need? You know,
Yeah.
so
You're making a great case. We need to get more films in Boulder, especially if they're going to look like this.
thank you.
So this is so good. Well, I'm so glad. So that was our 10 things. Look, we shared 10 things that we enjoy about this movie.
Mhm.
And the question for everybody listening is, what's on your list? What are
Yes.
things that you love about this movie? So feel free to jump into the comments and share your favorite things about Catch and Release, or new things that maybe you learned in this conversation. I certainly learned a lot hearing from Tom here. um, so we'd love to hear from you on that. Before we close out, Tom, is there anything that you have coming up, anywhere we can follow your journey, or what the Boulder Film Commission is working on?
Well, we have a certain big film festival we're trying to get to come to Boulder. Hopefully, we'll know about that in the next month or two. Um, I'm personally working on a feature film. I'm in pre-production now. Hope to shoot this summer. You can go to tomparkinfilms.com to learn more about me, the stuff I do. So, thank you.
So good. Everybody be sure to check those things out. We hope to follow your journey and wish you all the best for the thing that you're trying to bring to Boulder. And for those who are following Rom-Com Month as we go, next up, day 11, we're going to talk about Bull Durham from 1988. This is one of the sport-related movies on my list. It's a baseball film, but it's got Kevin Costner, Susan Sarandon, Tim Robbins, and I am joined by a very special guest, Billy O'Leary, who played Jimmy in that movie. So if you are ready for stories that I will tell you this, watch my face in the Bull Durham coverage, because I consistently think Jimmy's stories are going to inappropriate places, and I'm hoping he's going to keep it reined in, and then he always does at the last minute. So that's a little side game that you can play when you watch the Bull Durham coverage. Watch the movie, enjoy the conversation, and watch me almost freak out on a number of occasions. So it's so good. But that's the next one on the list. And I hope you'll all join me for that one. And in the meantime, happy Rom-Com Month, everybody. Get love, get donuts. Bye.